Varos was a world that almost no one in the galaxy wanted to visit. To outsiders, it was known by many fearful names. The Iron Graveyard, the World of Claws, the storm-scourged planet. But to the Varians who lived there, it was simply home. A brutal, unforgiving home. Yes, but one that shaped every living thing into something powerful. The planet itself looked hostile from orbit. Thick clouds swirled in storm belts, flashing with bright violet lightning. Oceans rose and fell like angry beasts, creating waves that smashed cliffs into dust. Forests were filled with thorn-covered trees that could pierce metal. The ground shook often, as if the world itself growled beneath the crust. Every creature that lived there had sharp senses, tough skin, and enough strength to break bones with a careless swipe. Only the Varians truly ruled the world, and they did so with pride. Their bodies were tall, muscular, and covered in dark plates that grew harder with age. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dark, trained to catch danger before danger caught them, and their culture was built on one belief: survival through strength. For centuries, the Varians thought they were the strongest species in the galaxy. Not because others told them so, most species simply avoided them entirely, but because Varos had forced them to become stronger than any challenge. Their ancestors had survived acid rain, moving mountains, giant predators, and air so thin during storm seasons that most off-worlders would faint after one breath. Varian children learned to walk in gravity that could crush the bones of weaker species. Young warriors trained in the Thorn Barrens, a region where razor-sharp vines moved like snakes. Scientists studied the deadly storms and discovered ways to turn toxic gases into energy sources. In every field, a Varian worked to push themselves further. Their society functioned smoothly because each person held a clear purpose: to keep Varos alive, and to keep their people fierce. But there was a growing problem, one that no Varian wished to admit. They were bored. There were no new enemies, no new trials, no worthy challenges left. The predators they once feared were now protected creatures, kept alive only for sport or ecological balance. Their harsh world had become too familiar. Their greatest warriors could shatter boulders but rarely needed to fight anything real anymore. Young soldiers trained endlessly but had no war to test themselves in. Scholars repeated old knowledge because they had already mapped every dangerous corner of their world. For a species that lived for challenge, this was a slow, creeping misery. Pride remained, yes. Strength remained, yes. But excitement, the thrill that once pushed Varian spirit, had dimmed. That changed the moment an unknown ship slipped into their star system. The first alert came from an outer observation station. A cold, blue light flashed on the control panel, signaling an unregistered vessel. A group of Varian monitors rushed toward the screens. Their claws tapped on the controls, zooming in on the image. A sleek, silver-gray starship hovered above the outer moon, its design unlike anything Varians had catalogued. It was small, shaped like an arrowhead, and did not broadcast any familiar signal. "Is it hostile?" one monitor growled. "It does not appear armed," another replied. "But it moves like a predator. Careful. Look how it adjusts its angle. Not nervous. Confident." That last word sent a ripple through the room. Confidence was not common among species who approached Varian space. Most ships either fled or sent panicked messages, begging not to be attacked. The High Command heard the report within minutes. In the Great Council Hall, leaders gathered tall, broad, and carrying badges of hardened metal on their armor. The hall's high ceiling echoed with their deep voices. "What species could this be?" asked General Tharok, a warrior known for surviving 3 volcanic eruptions. "No known signatures match," replied Scholar Major Karaya, "which means either a new species, or one that has avoided contact. Or one that hides," said another general with a low hiss. Silence followed. Hidden species often meant prey or cowards neither worth their time. But something about the ship's calm behavior made the Varian Council uneasy. Weak species did not act so self-assured. High Commander Velkar finally spoke. "Prepare the standard intimidation protocol." At once, a transmission was sent from the Varian flagship. The message was direct, loud, and full of power. Unknown vessel, you have entered Varian territory. State your purpose or be destroyed. The room waited. Many expected pleading or fear. Some hoped for a fight, finally breaking their long boredom. But the reply was strange, unexpected, almost friendly. A cheerful voice sounded through the speakers. "Hello, this is Captain Mira Hayes, representing Earth. We come in peace and request a meeting if possible." The council stared at the speaker as if it had insulted their ancestors. "Peace?" one general muttered. "They sound like they do not understand the situation." "They sound like they do not fear us," another corrected. Karaya leaned forward. "Earth. I have heard whispers of that world in old scientific archives. A classification number. Perhaps. Something unusual. Category 7, 8? Velkar asked. "Neither," Karaya said slowly, eyes narrowing. "If memory is correct, Earth was classified as a Category 0 Deathworld." A hush fell over the hall. Category 0. It was a classification used only a few times in galactic history, referring to worlds so dangerous, unstable, and unpredictable that the usual ranking system failed to apply. Worlds where even nature acted like a cunning enemy. Varos was ranked Category 5. That alone made them legends. But Category 0, that was beyond imagination. The council exchanged uneasy glances. "If these humans come from such a world," General Thurok whispered, "why do they sound so casual?" "Because," Karaya answered softly, "perhaps danger is equally casual for them." The idea felt absurd. Humans sounded soft, almost relaxed. Yet somewhere deep in their instincts, the Varians felt the weight of a truth they didn't yet understand. High Commander Velkar straightened. "Invite them to land at the summit base. We will meet them face to face. Let us see what these humans really are." The human ship descended a few hours later. The landing pad shook as it touched down, but not from force, simply from the strong winds coming off the nearby cliffs. Varian guards formed a semicircle around the landing area. Tall spears and heavy rifles held ready. The ship doors opened with a gentle hiss. Out stepped 3 humans. They were smaller than Varians, with soft skin, thinner limbs, and no natural armor. Their clothes were fabric, not metal. Their faces carried open smiles instead of battle-ready scowls. But something about them felt wrong in a way that tightened the air. They stood firmly. Their eyes moved sharply. Their breathing stayed calm in gravity that usually made weaker species collapse. One of them even looked around with open curiosity, as if this harsh environment was merely a new hiking trail. Varian Commander Syra approached them. She was nearly twice their height, her armor thick and polished. She expected fear. Instead, the lead human Captain Mira extended a gloved hand. "Thank you for agreeing to meet us." The gesture confused Syra, but she accepted it carefully. The human's grip was warm and surprisingly strong. Not Varian strong, but solid. Steady. Confident. "Welcome to Varos," Syra said. "We did not expect visitors from a world like Earth." "Most don't," Mira replied with a small laugh. "But we like meeting new neighbors." Neighbors. No species had ever used such a casual word toward Varians. Syra found herself studying their faces more closely. Their scars were small but numerous. Their eyes were bright with alertness. Their posture was relaxed, yet perfectly balanced. They carried no fear at all, not even the slightest tremble. For the first time in years, Syra felt a rare sensation rise inside her chest. Interest. These humans were different, strange, unexpected, and Varos, world of storms and monsters, was about to change forever. The Varian High Command had expected this first meeting to be a simple one. They had anticipated a show of power, a quick show of dominance to remind these newcomers of who was in charge. Instead, what they received was something far stranger: curiosity. As Captain Mira Hayes and her 2 companions stepped onto Varos, their eyes were filled not with awe or fear, but with an interest that seemed completely out of place. To the Varians, It was as if the humans were entering their world like they were just visiting a new neighborhood, completely unafraid of the dangers around them. Varian soldiers stood at attention, their weapons bristling with readiness. Yet none of the humans flinched. The human ship, small and sleek compared to the massive Varian warships, was still parked at the landing pad, silent and calm. It gave off an almost underwhelming presence, nothing like the threatening behemoths the Varians were used to. In the hours that followed the landing, the Varians debated what to do. Their initial shock hadn't worn off. Captain Mira and her two companions, both men, continued to behave as though they were simply meeting old friends. They smiled as they observed Varian soldiers, and even asked questions about the strange, harsh environment. The Varian High Commander, Velkar, called an emergency council meeting. The Grand Hall was packed with generals, scientists, and warlords, each looking more confused and concerned by the hour. "What are we dealing with here?" Velkar asked, his voice low but full of tension. "These humans. They do not show fear. Not even a hint of it. They behave as though they have no idea who we are. Perhaps they have no fear because they have never faced a threat they could not overcome." General Thurok mused, his brow furrowed. "Could they have something more dangerous than we realize?" Quote, Scholar Major Karaya spoke up. "It is possible. But their behavior is not what I expected from a Category 0 Deathworld species. If what records say is correct, Earth is a world full of predators and uncontrollable environments. Yet, they act like they're simply visiting a garden." Thurok's voice rumbled with suspicion. "You think they're pretending?" "I don't know," Karaya replied. "But something isn't right. Their casual demeanor suggests they are not afraid of our strength. Perhaps they see us as a challenge, not as an enemy." Velkar, the High Commander, stood and paced across the room. His large frame towered over the other council members, and his battle-scarred armor gleamed under the harsh lighting. He had fought in more battles than most Varians could even count. Yet, standing before these humans, he felt an unfamiliar uncertainty. "What should we do?" Velkar's question was simple, but the weight behind it was heavy. He looked at the holographic display, which showed the humans standing calmly under the towering cliffs of Varos. They had been asked to remain in the landing area for now, their ship remaining grounded, and their movements carefully observed. "We should meet them, face to face, once again," General Thurok suggested. "Let them see what true strength is. A show of power will make them reconsider their assumptions." "No," Velkar replied sharply. "We will not threaten them. Not yet. I want to understand their behavior first." The decision was made. The following morning, Captain Mira and her team were invited to meet with the High Command in the heart of the Varian capital. The council hall was a massive structure, built of dark stone and reinforced by ancient tech. Massive pillars held up the vaulted ceiling, and the air was heavy with the scent of ozone and dust. Captain Mira, along with her companions, walked into the hall. Their posture was relaxed, but their eyes were sharp. They noticed everything. The carvings on the walls, the weapons displayed, and the strange alien flora that decorated the edges of the room. They seemed to take in every detail, without fear or hesitation. High Commander Velkar sat at the head of the council table. His eyes glowed faintly in the dim light as he studied the humans. Around him were his generals and scholars, all silently observing. "You are not afraid of us, are you?" Velkar finally asked, his voice thick with suspicion and curiosity. Captain Mira smiled. "Afraid? I don't think that's the right word. We've traveled across space for months to meet you. Why would we be afraid? We're explorers." Velkar's eyes narrowed. "Explorers? You come from a world known for its extreme environments. You've survived storms, deadly creatures, and a chaotic environment that even the toughest species in the galaxy fear. And yet, you behave like tourists." Mira chuckled lightly. "I suppose you could say we're used to living on a world that constantly tests us. It's not easy, but we've adapted to survive." General Thurok, unable to hide his disbelief, scoffed. "Adapted? Your species does not survive by simply adapting. The conditions on Earth must be crushing. Actually, It's the opposite, Mira replied. Earth's environment has forced us to adapt, but in ways you might not expect. We've learned to use our brains, not just our muscles. We've developed technology, culture, and strategies to deal with the dangers around us. The room was silent for a moment as the Varians processed this. Thurok growled under his breath, but Velkar raised a hand, signaling him to remain quiet. Tell us more. Velkar's voice was calm now, though there was an unmistakable edge to it. Tell us about how your species survives. Mira leaned forward, her face earnest. We've learned to work together. It's not just about strength. It's about cooperation, innovation, and never giving up. Sure, we're strong, but it's our ability to think, to build, and to share ideas that has made us thrive. Cooperation? General Thurok spat. That sounds weak, but Mira shook her head. I disagree. We believe that working together makes us stronger, not weaker. Every person, no matter their size or strength, has something valuable to offer. That's how we've survived. The Varians exchanged glances. The idea was so foreign, so strange to them, that they couldn't grasp it fully. Their entire culture was built around individual strength and survival of the fittest. The thought that cooperation could be a form of strength was incomprehensible. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, Velkar stood up, his massive frame casting a shadow over the table. You speak of cooperation. And yet, you come to our world, uninvited. You approach us like equals, when no one else dares to challenge us. His voice grew colder. Tell me, Mira Hayes, why should we trust you? Mira met his gaze without hesitation. Because we don't want to challenge you. We want to learn from you. We want to understand. Earth isn't the only world that needs to grow. And I believe we could help each other. Her words hung in the air like a spark waiting to catch fire. For a moment, there was only silence. Finally, Velkar spoke again, his tone thoughtful. If you truly believe that, then you will have to prove it. The meeting ended soon after, with no clear answer from either side. The Varians were still unsure of these humans. Their fearlessness was unsettling, but their words had begun to plant seeds of doubt in the minds of the Council. Captain Mira and her team returned to their ship, while the Varian Council continued to deliberate. The tension in the air had shifted. The Varians no longer felt the confident superiority they had once taken for granted. They felt uncertain. As the humans made their way back to their ship, they were followed by a Varian scout who was watching them closely. But even the scout couldn't deny it. The humans were not like any species they had ever encountered before, and the more they observed, the more they realized they were not looking at prey. They were looking at something else entirely. Days passed after the first meeting. The tension in Varian capital was palpable. The High Command couldn't stop thinking about Captain Mira and her crew. Every report from scouts, every piece of data from their ship, painted a picture that made no sense. The humans were calm, confident, and yet, somehow, unfazed by the harshness of their world. General Thurok, who had led numerous campaigns in the past, was still struggling with the idea that a species like humans could be so composed. He had seen creatures flee from Varos's gravity, and even the strongest warlords struggled to breathe under the planet's oppressive atmosphere. Yet these humans walked among the Varians, as if it was just another walk in the park. Velkar, the High Commander, sat in his personal chamber, contemplating the meeting with the humans. He couldn't get their words out of his mind. They spoke of cooperation, innovation, and endurance. But it was more than that. There was something in the way Captain Mira spoke, a quiet challenge in her voice that left a mark. What are you trying to prove? Velkar muttered to himself, his eyes narrowing. It was then that Karaya, the scholar major, entered the room. Commander, we need to make a decision. Velkar looked up, his sharp eyes studying the scholar. Go on. Karaya set down a datapad, her voice measured. The humans have requested to join us in one of our trials. A survival test in the Thorn Barrens. Velkar raised an eyebrow. The Thorn Barrens were known throughout Varos as one of the most deadly regions on the planet. Dangerous terrain, ever-present storms, and packs of massive predators made it a place where only the strongest dared to enter. It was a trial reserved for warriors, a way to prove one's survival ability. They want to survive in the Barrens? Velkar's voice was incredulous. Yes. Karaya nodded. They insist that it will prove their ability to endure our world, to understand it fully. Velkar stood up, his massive form towering over the table. You're telling me that they want to walk into the most dangerous part of our world, unprepared, and survive? Just to prove something to us? Yes, Karaya replied, her tone firm. They seem to believe they can, and they are adamant. They see this as a way to demonstrate their resolve, their adaptability. They are serious. Velkar rubbed his chin thoughtfully. The idea was outrageous. Yet, there was something compelling about it. His first instinct was to refuse. No one, not even the fiercest Varian warrior, had ever asked to be put to the test in the Barrens by choice. And yet, Captain Mira's words echoed in his mind. We want to learn from you. We want to understand. The humans didn't want to conquer Varos. They wanted to coexist. Velkar had to admit, it was a strange concept. For a moment, he wondered if it was even possible. What are they expecting from this trial? He asked, his voice serious. They want to prove that they are not only survivors, but equals. That their strength is not just physical, but mental and emotional. They believe that the Barrens will show us that, Karaya explained. Velkar's gaze hardened. If they think they can survive, we will let them try. Let us see what they are truly made of. The Thorn Barrens was a vast, inhospitable expanse in the southern part of Varos. Towering cliffs lined its perimeter, and a never-ending storm cloud hovered over the region. The ground was jagged and uneven, covered in thorny plants that could pierce through the toughest armor. The wind howled relentlessly, and the air carried the scent of decay. Dangerous creatures roamed the Barrens, including the feared Grathor, massive predators with claws, as long as a spear and teeth that could crush bone. The trial was simple. Whoever survived the Barrens would prove themselves worthy of respect, and maybe even more. They would earn a place among the greatest Varian warriors. Captain Mira and her team, Lieutenant Jameson and Sergeant Hanna, stood at the edge of the Barrens, looking out at the seemingly endless wasteland. The storm above rumbled ominously, the air crackling with electricity. The wind howled, sharp and cold. Despite the chaos, Mira felt a sense of calm. This was what they had trained for. This was survival. She glanced at Jameson and Hanna. Jameson, tall and solid, was quietly preparing his gear, checking his weapons. Hanna, shorter but no less fierce, was organizing their supplies. Both were experts in survival, and though they had never faced anything like Varos, they were determined to prove that humans could adapt to any environment. Are we ready? Mira asked, her voice steady. Jameson gave a small nod. We've trained for this. Let's show them what Earth's made of. Hanna smirked. Time to survive. Not just survive. They turned and stepped into the Barrens, their first steps crunching the dry, thorny ground beneath them. The wind screamed, and the first wave of rain began to fall. The storm was more violent than they had anticipated, the electric clouds crackling with danger. But the humans kept moving, their eyes focused ahead, their bodies tensing against the harsh environment. Back at the Varian outpost, the High Command watched through holographic monitors. General Therok, Kiraya, and Velkar stood together, observing the humans' every move. The Varians had set up high-tech surveillance drones to monitor the humans in real time. It was their way of ensuring the humans wouldn't fall into any traps or be completely overwhelmed by the dangers of the Barrens. Therok scoffed. They're already struggling. Look at them. Karaya studied the screen closely. They're adapting quickly. They don't panic, even when the storm hits harder. Notice how they are rationing their water. Also scented our life. Velkar's eyes never left the display. He was impressed, despite himself. The humans were not rushing, They were conserving their energy, finding shelter when they could, and moving with purpose. They're surviving. Velkar's voice was soft, a mix of disbelief and reluctant respect. Tharok grunted. They'll be dead by nightfall. No one survives the Barrens without the strength of a Varian. Tharok. Velkar didn't respond immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the humans. The storm had intensified, and it was clear the terrain was unforgiving. Yet, the humans moved with determination. Even when the wind screamed and the thorns cut at their clothes, they didn't stop. Let's see how they handle the predators. Tharok's voice held a note of challenge. Velkar nodded. Yes. The Grathor will test them like nothing else. Let's see if they can face true danger. As the sun began to set, the humans were deep within the Barrens, the storm now a violent force that lashed out at them from every direction. They found shelter in a small ravine, and for a moment, they huddled together, catching their breath. But the danger was far from over. In the distance, the ground trembled, and the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the Barrens. Mira's sharp eyes immediately caught the movement, a shadow the size of a small mountain, moving with terrifying speed. Grathor. Jameson's voice was low, but filled with recognition. The massive creature appeared out of the dust, its glowing red eyes locking onto the humans. It was a beast of legend, taller than a Varian, and built like a mountain of muscle. Its claws were long and curved, like daggers, and its jaws could snap a tree in half. Mira's heart pounded in her chest, but she didn't hesitate. Get ready. This is it, the Grathor roared, its massive claws slashing the air as it charged. The humans quickly grabbed their weapons and took up defensive positions. But there was no time to think, only to act. Back at the Varian command post, the High Command watched with bated breath as the humans faced the Grathor. Velkar's hands gripped the edge of the control panel tightly. The entire room was silent. Tharok laughed darkly. They'll be crushed. But Velkar said nothing. His eyes were fixed on the humans. They weren't running. They weren't even panicking. Instead, they were circling, waiting for the right moment. As the Grathor lunged, Mira and Jameson worked in unison, drawing the beast's attention long enough for Hana to get in position. She fired her weapon, a high-powered plasma rifle, into the Grathor's side. The creature roared in pain but didn't back off. The battle was just beginning. The Grathor was not an easy opponent. It was a creature of pure fury, built to survive the harshest conditions of Varos. Its claws tore through the earth, its massive frame charging with relentless speed, and its glowing eyes locked onto the humans with a predator's focus. But the humans didn't panic. They didn't run. They did what they did best. Adapt. Mira, Jameson, and Hana had trained for moments like this. They had trained for survival, and now, in the heart of Varos's Thorn Barrens, that training was being put to the test in ways none of them had ever imagined. Move. Mira shouted, her voice firm as the Grathor lunged toward them. Jameson darted to the side, drawing the creature's attention away from the others. His weapon, a high-powered energy rifle, fired in quick bursts, hitting the Grathor in the shoulder. But the beast's thick hide absorbed most of the impact. The creature roared in rage, but the humans didn't slow down. Hana, meanwhile, crouched low, her eyes scanning the environment. The storm had picked up, the winds howling and the rain pouring, but she didn't let it distract her. She knew this was a battle of wits, not just firepower. Wait for it, Hana shouted, keeping low. Jameson, keeping the Grathor's attention, made a feint to the left, drawing the beast in. As the Grathor charged, its claws slashing at him, Hana took the shot. The plasma beam hit the Grathor right in the side, this time igniting the creature's thick fur and skin. The beast screamed, but it wasn't enough to stop it. It turned, furious. Its glowing eyes now filled with pure hate. Mira had to act. She darted forward, her pulse quickening. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about proving something. To the Varians. To the galaxy. To themselves. The Grathor charged once more, faster than they had anticipated. This time, It was after Hana. No! Jameson yelled, but it was too late. The Grathor swiped its claws down toward Hana, and she barely managed to roll out of the way. Her side grazed one of the claws, and a streak of blood appeared, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she pressed forward. Mira leaped at the Grathor's side, slamming her body against it with all her weight. The Grathor roared again, and in that moment of distraction, Jameson and Hana closed in. The next few seconds felt like hours. The Grathor, weakened from their combined attacks, staggered as the humans launched their final strikes. Hana's rifle fired again, this time hitting the Grathor's head. Mira, seizing the opportunity, threw a heavy grenade into the creature's chest, triggering a blast that sent the beast collapsing to the ground. For a moment, everything was silent. The Grathor lay still, smoke rising from the blast. "We did it," Hana breathed, her voice filled with disbelief. "We actually did it." Mira stood panting, sweat dripping from her face. Her heart raced, but she couldn't stop the smile that crept onto her lips. "I knew we could." Jameson, though breathing hard, couldn't help but grin. "That's the first Grathor I've ever killed. Let's make sure it's the last one for today," Mira said with a laugh, wiping her brow. The adrenaline was still pumping through her veins, but she knew the worst wasn't over yet. They still had to make it out of the Barrens. Back at the Varian outpost, the High Command had been watching the entire encounter through their surveillance drones. Their eyes were glued to the screens, watching the humans struggle against the Grathor. At first, they had been sure the humans would fall, just as every species before them had. But now, as they saw the humans standing victorious, their expressions began to change. General Tharok was the first to speak, his voice low with surprise. "They actually killed it." Karaya nodded slowly, still processing what she had seen. "I never thought they would. They fought the Grathor like warriors, not like survivors." Velkar remained silent, watching the humans closely. His thoughts were racing. These humans weren't just another species. They had done something no one had ever done before. They had faced down one of Varos's deadliest creatures and won. They are more than we expected," Velkar muttered under his breath, almost as if speaking to himself. Tharok crossed his arms. "So, what now? Do we declare them equals, as they claim?" Velkar didn't respond immediately. His gaze never left the humans, who were now making their way out of the Barrens, their movements steady and purposeful, despite the injuries they had sustained. "Not yet," Velkar said finally. "Let's give them one more test. Let's see if they can get out of the Barrens alive." The humans didn't stop after the battle with the Grathor. They knew the Barrens were a place of constant danger, and they needed to keep moving. The storm had begun to clear, but the landscape was still treacherous. Every step could bring them face to face with a new threat. "We're not out of the woods yet," Jameson said as they moved carefully through the rocky terrain. "I know," Mira replied. "But we can do this. Just stay sharp." The trio pressed on, keeping close together. Every sound in the Barrens seemed magnified by the storm's aftermath, the wind howling through the jagged cliffs, the distant rumble of thunder, and the occasional rustle in the underbrush. Then, just as they thought they were safe, they heard it. A low, guttural growl. The ground shook again, and they turned to see a second creature, a thorn behemoth, twice the size of the Grathor, charging toward them with a ferocious roar. "Get back!" Mira shouted, raising her weapon, but the thorn behemoth was too quick. It charged with terrifying speed, its massive body slamming into a nearby rock, sending debris flying. The humans barely had time to react. "This is it," Hana shouted. "We can't fight this thing head-on. We need a plan." Mira's mind raced. There was no time to wait. She scanned the area, looking for anything that could give them an edge. "Jameson, the cliffside," she yelled. Jameson nodded quickly. "Right, let's lead it that way." The humans split up, drawing the creature's attention. As it charged toward Jameson, Hana set up her plasma rifle, waiting for the right moment. Mira, meanwhile, darted to the side, moving quickly toward the cliffside. The thorn behemoth was close now. but it wasn't aware of the trap they had set. Mira motioned to Hana. Now, Hana fired a concentrated shot, hitting the behemoth's eye. It howled in pain, but the beast was already too close. The impact staggered it, just enough for Mira to grab a rope and swing across a gap in the cliff, pulling herself up to the ledge. "This is it!" she yelled. "Get up here!" Jameson and Hana followed quickly, climbing with urgency. The thorn behemoth, enraged by the attack, lunged once more, but it was too late. The creature lost its footing and plunged into the ravine below with a deafening crash. Breathing heavily, Mira looked down at the creature's fallen form. "We've done it. We've survived," Jameson exhaled, wiping his forehead. Hana just smiled, eyes gleaming. "We've got this." When they finally emerged from the barrens, battered but alive, the Varian High Command was waiting for them. Velkar and his generals stood at the edge of the landing pad, their expressions unreadable. The humans walked toward them, their heads held high despite the exhaustion and injuries. Velkar studied them silently for a long moment. Then, he spoke. "You've proven your strength." His voice was deep and filled with respect. "You've survived what none thought possible. You've earned the right to speak as equals." Mira smiled, but it wasn't just pride that filled her. It was something deeper, a realization that this moment wasn't the end of their journey, but the beginning of something far bigger. "We came to learn. And now, we've begun to teach," Mira said quietly, her voice strong and steady.